Chapter 16, The Cat and the Elephant. Well, Zuki purred to Blaze, the last thing I remember was crawling into your backpack for a nap. It was such a comfortable spot, snuggled in with your sweater. Nice and warm. I slept soundly. I woke up a couple of times, but the jostling and the bouncing just lulled me right back to sleep. I knew I wasn't supposed to be in the bag, so I thought I better just stay quiet until we got to where we were going. The truth is that I wanted to have an adventure. I didn't want to be left behind again. I even packed a few toys. It can be boring when you take off and are gone for days. Emma's okay, but you're more fun. I brought some mice to play with, and my Neko fly. That's Zuki's favorite, Blaze interjected. It's like a little fishing rod. If one of you wouldn't mind bouncing it around a bit, I could get some exercise, Zuki meowed. Not now, Zuki, maybe after. We're in the middle of a rather important meeting, Blaze pointed out. Blaze, before we go on, you have to explain what we are seeing. This is beyond ridiculous. A talking cat? Is this some kind of joke or a ventriloquist act? Asher blurted out. Careful, Asher, Zuki's going to be offended. Don't get him started. We'll never hear the end of it, Blaze cautioned. And just what do you find ridiculous about this, Asher? Zuki began. Let me jump in, Zuki, Blaze hastily interjected. I'm sure that Asher did not mean to offend you. It's just that he's from a time before clear communication brought about the Great Connection. The time before manners too? He should know better than to talk about me as if I'm not even in the room. Show some respect. Zuki hissed. Whoa, Zuki's very sensitive, Grace whispered to Caleb and Asher. We would do well to just zip our lips until Blaze explains. Zip your lips, bite your tongue, clam up, button up, shut your trap. All good. Zuki hissed. Listen to understand what's going on, then make your comments. See what I mean, Blaze sighed. When Zuki gets going it can be a little difficult to slow him down. We call him Yoda Cat in the lab. He's always contributing to our work. He's extremely intelligent, but he uses a lot of sarcasm, and he does have a wicked sense of humor. Careful, Blaze, Zuki purred. Stick to the facts and educate these humans. Okay, Blaze continued. Caleb, you once asked me how it was possible to know what animals were saying. I remember. You told me that you had practiced MAs on farm animals, Caleb recalled. Exactly. In the future, special devices have revolutionized communication between species. The experiment started in your time actually. The whole concept grew out of the use of AI voices. You know, artificial intelligence. One of the designers of an early AI voice, which you may know of as Alexa, began experiments with a cat translation collar. The concept was pretty straightforward. Record all the variations and vocalizations of an animal, then figure out how the concept could be described in human language. The early models were quite crude, with very limited capabilities. Single word and short phrase thoughts, mostly questions, commands and statements. Then the language specialists got involved and the documenting of the language just got more and more complex. We humans really had no idea of the details of language amongst animals. When the threshold of full communication complexity was achieved with cats and dogs, many canine and feline volunteers joined the study groups and concepts literally exploded from there. Zuki has been one of the cats working with the language experts. It initially shocked many people to see how smart cats and dogs are. Especially cats, Zuki interjected. But now, it's just accepted. Special devices, called MaxTalks, have opened up whole new areas of study. MaxTalk is an acronym. Each letter stands for a different word. M is multiple, A is animal, X is for cross, T for translating, O is for omniscient, and C for communicator, multiple animal cross-translating omniscient communicator. Quite a mouthful, but at least it says what it does. Research and development departments, in communication firms around the world, are working to connect all corners of the animal kingdom with humans. It really has become the great connection that has been brought about by clear communication through this amazing tech. What does omniscient mean? Grace asked. I've never heard that word. Great question. It means having, or seeming to have, unlimited knowledge. It's about wisdom, which is what the communicator has brought. Really, it was just an extension of translation apps on phones. You know, where you speak a phrase in one language and an AI voice speaks it in another language. That has really been perfected in my time. Now imagine a system which automatically references hundreds of human languages and thousands of animal languages. And it doesn't just track words and sounds. Special sensors detect facial expressions, body language and other forms of non-verbal communication. There are a few controls on his collar that Zuki manages with his paw, but we are moving into fully sound-activated models now. Beyond that, scientists are looking at ways to interpret thoughts. That's continuing to expand our understanding. I'll say it again. Humans had no idea of the intelligence of the members of the animal kingdom. You know, one thing that has resulted is that the farther you get into the future, the more people become vegetarian. With greater understanding of the animal kingdom and the intelligence there, people have generally switched to plant-based proteins. But enough about that. You no doubt have more questions about other things. Blaze came to a stop as he was met with enthusiastic nods. I was curious about how you arrive here through time, Asher asked. And the fact that Zuki was able to join you. How does that work? Well, you may have heard parts of this already, but not all the details. Let me explain. The same spiral growth that exists in many plant organisms also governs the growth and expansion of time. With enough amplification, those spirals can be traveled on. Currently at least, travel has to be focused on and around a living organism. Old growth trees facilitate the transfer between time periods. Studies in your time had begun to look at communication between trees and suspected auras that surrounded them. In the future it will be confirmed that there are auras around these living things that are made up of spirals that circle the trees and spread outward. These will be harnessed and amplified. A connection is then made between the DNA of the traveler and the DNA of the tree. Given enough amplification, and enough energy directed into the spirals, along with the right ratio of numbers in the spiral, and we end up being able to move through set periods of time. Think of it as moving back on a spiral through time, like a corkscrew. So, we're in the same physical location but we have drilled back through time. Huge amounts of energy are required, and high speeds need to be achieved. There are extreme temperatures and intense pressure during the transfer process. How are you still alive? And how could Zuki make it through all that? Grace asked. That would be thanks to the wonders of our travel shroud. It's a pressurized wrap, like a spacesuit, but very lightweight. The material resembles that of a blanket for emergencies. You know, the kind with the silvery, metallic fabric. I climb in with my backpack, and it automatically seals up. It has its own oxygen supply and a system to maintain constant internal pressure and temperature, despite what's going on around us. And it obviously works even when you have a stowaway in your bag with you. First time that's happened as far as I know. After the unit automatically seals, a signal is sent to our control computer in the lab, which then verifies my DNA and initiates a wireless energy transfer. Once the energy transfer reaches the optimal level, we are sucked onto the spirals. The whole transfer takes less than a second per year. Blink a few times and we're here. When we arrive, we slide off the spirals once speed comes below a certain threshold. We are actually rotating around the living thing, in this case the tree, at extremely high speed. As we slow, we move down the tree trunk. If the landing is done correctly, we come to speed 0 at the base of the tree. There is a huge energy displacement though, so it's important to have a sealed suit on. If a person was nearby, without protection, they would definitely get a headache. Blaze went on to explain how the energy displacement freezes life forms in the area. Tell me about it, Caleb muttered. He had a sudden thought. Do you ever get snagged on anything? Like a branch on a tree? Why yes, It did happen once, Blaze noted. We slowed a little prematurely, becoming more molecularly solid a little too early. Snagged the suit on the way down. Tore a little piece off. Fortunately, with all our clever quick training, we time travelers are always able to work out solutions on the fly. Because of that training, I was able to make some last microsecond adjustments so that the landing was not lethal. We are also well prepared with the materials and tools to fix practically anything. I had a patch kit on board, so there were no worries once I got the shroud safely on the ground. Got a really bad headache and some bruises on that arrival. Wait, what made you think to ask that? Oh, you found the tree, didn't you? Yes, Caleb responded. We were all in the ravine when you made your last arrival. I was knocked out. That can be dangerous. You don't want to be messing around when there is that much energy involved, Blaze cautioned. Probably my fault for not talking to you about all this sooner. Apologies. Promise me you won't go near that tree again if it's a day you know I'm traveling. Blaze made eye contact with them all as they nodded in agreement. Zuki had been napping. He now woke, stretched and looked around the room. So, have these ignorant humans now had their thinking brought forward into the enlightened age? Zuki growled. Pretty much, Zuki. Now it might be useful for you to show some manners and sit quietly while we continue our meeting, Blaze counseled. Zuki spread his paws and made a slight bow. He really was getting quite good at mimicking human behaviors. It's most important to be able to make sense of the information that comes your way. Make sure that, with whatever you're learning, that you know how it fits with other information. You also need to always be aware that your understanding is going to expand. Have room to add new information and connect it with what you already know. This can be tricky, since people naturally want to assume they are right, and others are wrong. Often, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I know you wanted me to be quiet, but I can add to that thought, Blaze, mewed Zuki. I listened to recordings of author readings and books between naps in the lab. It's true, Zuki has been part of an experiment to test the limits of feline intelligence, Blaze related. We haven't found the limits yet. Zuki just keeps making more connections. I go to him for advice all the time. Recently, I've been listening to tales from ancient India, Zuki began. There's a story that illustrates what Blaze is talking about. Here it is. A group of young, blind, travelers were journeying to a distant part of their land. They wanted to learn more about the world. They had had very little schooling as young men and women. In particular, they knew almost nothing about the animals that lived in these distant lands. As they approached a new village, they heard that there was an elephant that lived on a local farm. They had no idea what an elephant was. They had never heard of such an animal, and they had no idea what it looked like. They decided to go find out. With help, they made it to the right house and were told that the elephant was out back, and they were welcome to go and learn about it. We can't see the elephant with our eyes, so we will have to see the elephant with our hands, one of them advised. With that, they stepped forward. One reached out and felt the tail. He immediately declared, "The elephant is like a rope, long and twisted." Another reached out and felt the trunk. Right away, she announced, "The elephant is like a thick snake." A third reached out and felt the side. He immediately proclaimed, "The elephant is like a wall." The next reached out and felt a leg. She immediately asserted, "The elephant is like a pillar of a tree trunk." One reached out and felt the ears. He right away pointed out, "The elephant is like a fan." Finally, the last one of the group reached out and felt the tusk. Seconds later she professed, "The elephant is hard and smooth, with a sharp point, like a spear." None of them agreed with any of the others. Each was convinced that the others were lying about the elephant. This made them angry, and they raised their voices, each proclaiming what they thought was the truth. Soon, no individual words could be heard. It had turned into a yelling match. Further aggravated, many started flailing their fists as they moved around. They were all hitting and being hit. Soon, bruised and bloodied, they were exhausted. That's how the homeowner found them. Stopping to gather their breaths, they explained what had happened. "Well, the fact is," began the homeowner, "you are all partly right, but, at the same time, completely wrong about what an elephant is. There is another way you could have handled this. You could have decided first to understand what information each of you had. By sharing, you would all have gained the wisdom of others. That extra wisdom, when put with your own, increases your understanding. Collaboration does that. It leads to more learning." With that, Zuki paused and looked around. The group nodded their understanding. "You need to seek first to understand, then to be understood," Blaze resumed his instruction. "As we mentioned, you should always assume that you never have the absolute complete picture about any topic you have in your mind. Always imagine that you have more to learn to make your picture more complete and more accurate. When someone provides information that doesn't fit with your understanding, be curious and ask them what makes them think that. Today you're going to watch video A16, which is about understanding information. You will find several strategies that will greatly help you understand the information you encounter. You will learn about the SMILE approach, which contains something called a MOD, or a mapped outline diagram. It's a way of mapping the notes you take from information you receive. The great thing about it is that it's very easy to add more information to your original diagram. That way, if you notice something else important in your reading, or you get some facts from some other source, you can add to your MOD. It's an approach that the blind travelers could have used in the story Zuki told. Think about that when you watch the video. The whole process is set up as something that you write down, but it's also something that can be powerful if you picture the diagram in your mind. Be aware that you can always improve your understanding of most concepts and ideas. You mentioned SMILE. I assume that those letters stand for something? Grace asked. Absolutely. Skim to get the big picture, map out main idea notes in a MOD format. Identify exactly what you need. Link your information on your MOD as you gather more information, and encode material for effective learning. Watch for these steps and make them something you do regularly. You won't regret it, Blaze concluded. Within moments, they were all gathered around Caleb's computer. Well, all except Zuki, who wandered off to check out his new surroundings.